welcome to Tabula Rasa. Let's talk about feminism. I know I did a little puzzle piece on it, but let's talk about it for real. Now, let's start at the beginning of it. No, not with Gloria Steinem. No, not with the suffragettes like Susan B. Anthony. Before Jeremy Bentham. How far back? Well, how about before the idea began? Way back to, let's say, the start of civilization. Now, let's set up some ground rules for this whole thing, because feminism is one of those topics. Alright, so I will be citing every source I get. This is going to be one of those academic type essays, except in video format. And if it is by Wikipedia, I will be citing where Wikipedia got its source. So if you're wondering why I'm going with Wikipedia, when many of you probably heard, don't use Wikipedia because it's bad, well, let's just say because it's convenient and quick, and if I do need to read the primary source, I'll do it, but until then, I'm going to work with what's easily accessible. And I am not in academia, so where basically you get paid to look through primary sources or to be a primary source. But moving on. Does it matter that I'm a guy doing this, talking about feminism? No, it doesn't. Why am I doing it? Well, because feminism has become one of the subjects that have become bad to discuss as religion, politics, and race, possibly because the subject matter of feminism is a part of religion and politics and race. In fact, put it simply, women have always been a part of society, quote unquote, regardless of the era. And two, I think there are too many people on whatever side of the divide that you are on, I don't know, that don't really know enough to be influencers about it, okay? Obvious examples are Anita Sarkeesian, Steven Crowder, Jeremy Hambley, and who the fuck is Robert Jensen? Well, let's see. Robert Jensen. According to Wikipedia, he is a former professor of journalism at the University of Texas, Austin, taught graduate and undergraduate courses in media, law, and politics, wrote a book in 2017 titled The End of Patriarchy, Radical Feminism for Men, also written about white privilege and institutional racism. Also sits on the editorial board of the academic journal Sexualization, Media, and Society. Okay, his thesis was called Knowing Pornography, apparently also known for an article called Getting Off Pornography and the End of Masculinity. He also wrote books, plenty of stuff to go over. I don't know if he wrote his own Wikipedia article, because it looks very much like a academic vita or curriculum vita. Never mind, I'm going off topic here. But we will probably need to go over all of his stuff, or some of his stuff. And, fuck. He has a fucking TED Talk. Fucking TED Talk. Okay. So, let's see. Going back to the Wikipedia article on feminism, especially proto-feminism, apparently according to Eileen H. Botting and Sarah L. Hauser, who wrote Drawing the Line of Equality, Hannah Mathers Crocker on Women's Rights from the American Political Science Review in 2006, according to this journal, the concept of feminism was still unknown before the 20th century, meaning that it is a modern idea. Modern being anything post-20th century. Okay, and also according to Nancy F. Cott from The Grounding of Modern Feminism, and Karen M. Offen from European Feminism's 1700 to 1950, A Political History. The usage of the term was perhaps used in the 18th and 19th century. They used the word subsumed, which means included or absorbed something in something else. Okay. Also, the same part also says proto-feminism and post-feminism is being questioned by modern scholars, or at least, take that with a grain of salt, because, again, it does come from Wikipedia. Alright, so, looking at the before, let's see, so we have ancient Greece and Rome, Islam, medieval Europe, European Renaissance, up to the 18th century, which jives from earlier. Okay, and according to the Wikipedia page on feminism on June 8th, 2020, it doesn't show anything about the Asian half of the world, or the African part, or South American part. Is that racism? No. There's not enough evidence to make that claim. Okay, so lot to go over. So how do we tackle such a subject at this point? Well, let's go over it out loud. Since feminism is essentially undefined, or rather the term itself is very broad, we won't be using the term feminism. Okay? So what do? Do what academics do. Take a word and put a definition on it and reiterate the point that you are making a point based on the terminology. That way it acts as a litmus test of people who are actually trying to listen to you and people who are just being dicks and who are just trying to undermine you by changing your definition or using it out of context. Oh, because you're not using this definition, clearly you are wrong. Well, clearly you're fucking not listening. Okay, and like I said before in a previous video for Tabula Rasa, because feminism is so broad and to try and dive in is very laborious, let's try to think of a way to make it less so. Alright, a new way to view this whole thing. Let's see, is it even an area of study that has a name? What would you call an area of study that looks at shifts in perceived roles and functions and notions of society based on the sexual characteristics of humans? Well, that's anthropology, right? But you also have sociology and psychology mixed in there for the modern day stuff, and then biology, of course, also plays a role because, again, that's who we are, in a sense. Feminist studies in themselves, you might be thinking that's what that is, right? Well, feminist studies are exclusive by its very nature and thus creates a bias, As Anita Sarkeesian once said, everything is racist, everything is sexist, everything is biased, and that's not exactly a proper way. No, not even proper. It's not a way to find out the truth of the whole thing and to put it in its correct context, because you're starting from a certain point of view. Alright, so we don't want to have any biases, or reduce them, at least as much as possible. Okay, let's see, politics. Well, considering how one views the role of government and the relationships of those who play a role in that, but that's not really the cause of anything. It's just really a way to see who's in what camp. Who's on your team and who's not. That's essentially what politics is, right? So that's not helpful. Clearly, it's a branch of academia that has to intertwine all of this. Journalism? No, not journalism. If there's any field that's also full of self-prophesizing bias, it's journalism, along with political studies. Sexology? No, that's taken, and that's about something else. Maybe make up a new word. Civitology. Okay, forget the name. Let's just put a pin in that for now. Okay. Let's move on. Now, let's start with what people think feminism is. So, in that sense, feminism, in the colloquial Lazy Susan Joe Blow version is something to do with the concept of equality amongst the sexes and what rights, quote unquote, sexes should have and should not have, and what they can do and not do. We know that also has something to do with the roles of each sexually dimorphic species, that is the Homo sapien, and what civilization and society determines what is appropriate for each sex. So any sort of analysis in this field should also include the reasons why the roles came to be, whether it's based on culture, religion, etc., and the change over time. Okay, and we also have to examine whether or not the roles were considered advantageous or disadvantageous, and which also has to view with the change over time as well. And then we also have to look at the variance of these views as well, because just because Village A may have been a chauvinist paradise doesn't necessarily mean Village B that's nearby was too, so on and so forth. People can be different. Amazing. And to keep everything in context, we will also have to examine everything within the same time period together. So if I am looking at women's roles in ancient Egypt, which is like 3,000 years, I also have to look at, the women's roles in ancient India during that same time, if we can get that information. So again, we're trying to put everything within its correct context. And like I stated before, everything will have a citation, whether it's shown on the screen or within the comments page as well. And if you can add on to this, that would be great. That's a lot of stuff to go over. And hopefully there is a way to simplify this whole thing. At least, streamline it. Okay, so let's start with what we know. Okay, 1, we are human beings, a species that is self-aware and sexually dimorphic. Sexually dimorphic means that our species exhibit different characteristics beyond the differences of our sex organs. This is just simply biology. And for some of you who may be wondering why I'm not including the transgender stuff in this, is because, well, I really don't know. And I'm just talking about biology here. How people, act based on how they feel, that's a separate can of worms, to say the least. And yeah, we're just looking at biology. Functions, organs, that's it. Now, 2. We live in a society where things like labor, academics, whatever, are divided up. Basically, nobody can do everything, so we all work together. Oh, shit. That's not much to start on. Well, hopefully we'll get to put more puzzle pieces together. Well, that's Tabula Rasa for today. Next time, let's go over what the ancient world was like for both men and women, because it takes two. And by ancient, I mean anywhere where there has been written down accounts that are translated and accessible today. Am I limiting what we are looking over? Yeah, but again, it kind of defeats the point if I don't know what people thought. I mean, without writing, how are we supposed to know what people thought way back when if they had no way of transmitting those thoughts over time? Oral tradition is generally not telling personal stories. Like, no one's talking about, their time when their great whatever ancestor heard over tea or at the campfire in way back when, right? I mean, oral traditions don't work like that, to say the least. Hopefully, well, it's not much of a start, but it is a start. Hopefully, this will help start putting everything into perspective, and we'll all be on the same page when it comes to this particular field. Yeah, right. If it was that simple, then we wouldn't have academia or our society today. Am I right, folks? This has been Tabula Rasa for today's episode. Hopefully, this has been Tabula Rasa for today's episode on the beginning of feminism, part 1. Haven't really started much, but something tells me this is going to be a long video series. Good night, folks.